the dragons in Dungeons and Dragons are kind of weird, right? Like, I know they're not real, I know they're mythical creatures, and this isn't going to be one of those D&D is just terrible videos. But there's long been a discussion about the relevancy of the alignment chart. I, for one, have no love or bias for it, so I can speak freely about it, but the dragons in D&D are arranged so that if they're of a colour, they're evil. If they're metallic, they're good, and the gemstones are just in the middle, neutral. And the thing that makes it weird for me is that dragons, as in the guys that are red, green, blue, etc., are typically pretty intelligent creatures. And to be fair, I think it's strange when an intelligent creature is given an alignment in most circumstances anyway, but dragons go further than this, and they're colour-coded into a type that determines not only their alignment, but how they act in the world. Like, if you look at how all the different dragons act, you'll see that some of them like being deceptive, some prefer being head-on and destructive, and some prefer ambush tactics. But here's the thing, if I picked up the monster manual, read that description of a dragon, and said, oh yeah, that's how an animal was to act, it would be fine. You know, like, spiders typically make webs, predators like lions stalk and then sprint and kill, etc. But dragons are intelligent creatures. They're typically more intelligent than the average person, and they don't normally have parents that bring them up or anything, so why do dragons end up having a fairly fixed system for how they are? Never mind saying dragons are super powerful because they're massive, they breathe fire or whatever it is. Humanoids are terrifying compared to dragons because, unlike a dragon, they aren't assigned limits. However, just to give a counter to my own point, Mind Flayers. Mind Flayers are super smart creatures that are narrowed down into acting in very similar ways and being very similarly evil and vile, but Mind Flayers eat brains. To put that in a different way, they don't eat meat like a dragon can, so they can't just go hunt wild animals or even farm like people do. They have to eat people's brains. Also, in the same way that all creatures have a innate and natural drive for reproduction, the instinctual means of reproduction for a Mind Flayer is essentially killing a humanoid in a gruesome and terribly painful way. These alien-minded beings can only get sustenance from killing humanoids, sucking out their brains, and their only means of reproduction is to commit horrific acts against feeling and thinking beings. That is a biological trait that would push a creature to acting in a certain, very horrific way. But dragons? You might think, well, if you were so grand and large, you'd think much less of people and consider them ants and wouldn't care for your actions against them. So why are the metallic ones good? Aren't they equally grand and large? And you might say, well, the metallic dragon god is good. Okay. So is your orc player character evil? Because Grumsh is an awful dude. No? What, your orc is a big lovable good boy? Then why are chromatic dragons such dicks when they have a lot more freedom to not be? I'm trying to think of an equally biological or otherworldly reason for dragons to be compelled like they are, and I recall there being an idea that if dragons don't have a great horde, then they won't go to an afterlife. About the whole dragon afterlife horde requirement being a bad boy for the sake of my afterlife thing, is that a fact? Or is it just like a religious thing? Because if that's real, here's a harrowing thought. If you kill a young dragon or a dragon wormling, isn't that you just sending a child dragon into a state of endless purgatory because it didn't have the chance to get a golden toilet to sit on? Some of you might know that I'm making a system for a fantasy role-playing game called Sanctum, and recently I've been making all the enemies for it and having a blast doing so. Even in the early stages of making Sanctum, I knew that dragons, I wanted to do something a bit different with them to change the usual perception on what dragons are. And I definitely knew that I didn't want to colour code them. For Sanctum, I like this idea that dragons are basically elementals, since they can breathe fire, ice, or whatever. As these great elemental beings were pushed out of their world into ours, the latent magics that came from them started to make other creatures evolve from their magic, and they were more animalistic. These drakes, as I call them, are more animalistic and unintelligent. They're more like the dragons from How to Train Your Dragon. So, what this means, these true dragons, these massive intelligent creatures that are formed and divided by their elements, don't really have a defined way of thinking. they're just different flavours of elemental power. Meanwhile, these drakes do have a way of thinking, in the same way that birds make a nest, spiders make webs, and shrike birds impale their prey on spikes. But in answer to myself, I guess. First of all, alignment is being changed in these newer editions, so it says typically evil, so it's less concrete that things are just born with evil in their hearts, which, to be fair to me, is only a recent change. And also, alignment when used prescriptively is just super weird and can lead to problems with any creature, not just dragons. So instead, as DMs, use alignment to gauge motive and how a creature's supposed to be used in the game. Why are dragons evil? Because now that they're evil, you can fight them in your game. Simple. As DMs, we should approach alignment as an insight into the designer's intention for the usage of the creature. It says here that red dragons are evil. Okay, that means that you as the DM should give it an evil motive to explain this. Mind flayers have a very grim, but very simple to employ motive to apply to every single one of them. But dragons should have an intelligent and impactful reason to be evil. Not just because of their alignment, and not just because of their colours. Look at the alignment, give them an evil motive, so the alignment fits. Even though I think that the hordes, damsels, and way that they hunt and kill being inherent to the dragon's colour is still weird. In essence, do whatever you want with monsters, dragons, whatever it is. If you think I'm wrong, then that's absolutely fine. Having a gold dragon turn evil is super cool, especially if your players bring meta knowledge to the table. Also, if you heard me talk about the whole alignment versus motive thing, and you thought, well, I thought that was implied, well, then this advice isn't for you. It's for the people that need this advice, because the books won't tell you. I don't know, I made this whole video because I thought it was weird. Like, you look at the monster manual and you see alignment, but also dragons have this other axes to chart how they act in a specific way. Like, humans don't come into the world with an inherent desire to be an accountant or anything. Maybe I also want to wallow in a swamp and lure adventurers to their death like a green dragon. Let's be real, I just want to do the first bit. Thank you for watching, I'm Ellis, and if you want to see more on monsters, click the video on screen to see how to make ABOLETHS more menacing and interesting. Or, check out the other video on screen to see how to make anything more interesting in your games. I love you all, and I'll see you next Saturday.